So like Josh said, I'm a project manager here at Skookum. You kind of ruined a little bit of my story. Oh, louder, a little bit louder. So you kind of ruined a little bit of my story, so I'll get to that in a minute. But I think that there's a pressing question that I need to ask about, and I'm going to look to, where's Liza? Oh, Liza, what do you think about these pants? How do you feel about them? Yeah. What about the shirt? How do you? Okay. And these glasses, they're kind of new, so I'm like trying them out. You might have an opinion about them. Anybody care about it? No, you like them? Okay. I hear what you're saying, but like your body language is telling me something a little different. But okay, that's fair. That's fair. So to kind of get started on this, really why I'm fired up about this talk and about this subject is because, as Josh said, we just opened this moon base out here in Denver, and we have this, we're imported from Charlotte, and as we're moving out here, I'm looking for a place to live, Liza and I. And as we're looking for a place to live, we find a good place. We move in. The first thing that goes wrong with the apartment is a light bulb in the bathroom goes out, right? No big deal. It's kind of a small thing. But what ends up happening is, you have to submit a work order, and they come out and they change it. No big deal. Again, right? Very small thing. What they leave behind is this piece of paper. Liza and I are out, so they leave behind this piece of paper, and it says, like, give us any comments, give us any feedback about this experience. I'm thinking, like, this is a light bulb change. It's a very small thing. It's kind of like the Mitch Hedberg, do I need a receipt for a donut kind of thing, right? Like, just threw it away, didn't think too much about it. But what ended up happening is, like, a couple of days later, I got an email. It was like, hey, we'd like your feedback about the service request that we just performed. And I'm like, what service request? I don't even remember because it was, just this light bulb change, right? So I don't really think much about it. I'm not a fan of surveys to begin with, so I didn't fill it out. But then 2 or 3 days later, I got a reminder to follow up to make sure that I did the survey about this service request. So I'm intrigued at this point. I click on the link. I start to go through this process of looking at the survey. And this is maybe the second screen of the survey. So they're asking me what kind of service they did to my apartment that they came to do. And so, like, I get it. Maybe it's a third-party company, whatever. But the point here is that it's going to take me longer to fill this out than it was for them to actually change the light bulb and do this thing, right? So at this point, I have this small idea in my head, but I start to see things other places. It's like when you're interested in something and you start to see it pop up all over the place where you get this heightened awareness about something all of a sudden. You're acutely tuned into this phenomenon. And so this is kind of a collection of things that maybe I've intentionally signed up for surveys, maybe I haven't, but most of these are unsolicited, right? They come to your inbox, you have some experience, and you get this survey and you're like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm sure, can you raise your hand? Who remembers the last survey they filled out? Let's try that. 1, 2, 3, there you go. So I could give you all the statistics, but they're mostly made up anyway, I'm sure. But basically, no one fills out surveys, a very small percentage, and people, even smaller percentage of people actually make it all the way through and get feedback. So, if you kind of see some of these, like this one is just a call with this company, Pods, right? They want to know feedback about this call. So this insignificant thing becomes like a request and an assault on like my inbox and my time. They're requesting this of me. So what I really come to conclude about this is that it's a disguise, right? It's a poor excuse for customer service. It's like, ooh, say something good about us, or tell us how we could do better, or, like, does anybody really believe that their feedback is gonna affect change at this company? And I think the answer that I come to is no, right? Like, because they're full of these suggestive questions, they're leading you down a path that they want you to go on and to get information out of you that they need. But ultimately, it's not quantifiable. So I think it's pretty lazy, right? It's a poor excuse. So the conclusion to that is the damage that this causes is greater than the benefit that you get out of a survey. And the reason is because, we hope you had a good customer experience, but now let's fill out the survey. So I was talking to a bunch of different people about this. Thank you if you work at Skookum and I've talked your ear off about this. I appreciate it. And Ryan gave me an example. Where's Ryan? Excellent. Thanks, Ryan. Ryan gave me a great example of something that happened, and he had a great opinion of DirecTV. Loved it. Great service. They're known for great customer service. But he canceled the service and moved to a new place. And when he did that, what ended up happening is they started badgering him with survey requests, phone calls. How can we bring you back? You want to be a customer. But they wouldn't drop it. And so ultimately he had to get a little bit rude with someone just to get him to drop it. So this experience that he had that was positive became like a negative experience all of a sudden. And his view of the company changed. And I want to point out here that Skookum as a company, we're not immune to this either. Like we fall victim to the same kinds of trends. We solicit customers, clients for surveys. We want to know how we can get better. And I think it's just part of getting caught up in the sort of this trend of what's going on with ways to get feedback. So obviously you're thinking there's got to be a better way, right? Like how can we get what we need without badgering the people that we need to get it from? Why is this such a painful process? So to highlight one more time with a different example that's a little bit more related to sort of apps is basically, this is a topic that's kept me awake at night. So I use this app to sleep as an alarm clock. It's amazing. You should use it. It'll change your life. But the only time I use it is right before I go to bed and right when I wake up in the morning. It's not the time that I'm going to rate the app. I get why they need it. I totally understand why they need the data. It's for the App Store. They want better reviews. They want people to download it. But the time that they're asking for it is not correct, and it's just intrusive in what I'm trying to do, right? So how can we get the information that we need to make the decisions that we need to do? So if you take a step back, I want to talk really quickly about why feedback is important. We can all get set on why this is important and what the goal of it is, right? It's important because we need to make decisions based on how we can get better. We're testing some idea. The goal of it is to test a new idea, to get more customers, to give better customer experience. A lot of those things are what we feel as a business or as an entity that we want to do, right? We want to provide better customer service. So we look to our customers to give us that idea. But what do we really want? We want their feedback and we want their information, but what we really want is we want the data, right? We want to use data to make better decisions. So this is a quick example that we use at Skookum to something that we were trying as in a beta phase where we basically wanted to get a client survey. We wanted to get a pulse survey like once a week from a client. And we were beta testing this new application that we had built. And since we had a really good relationship with this particular client, we let them know what we were trying to achieve. We sent them out the request, and we got some interesting feedback from them, which was nice. They said basically that they would not want to participate in something like this for two reasons. One, because it's just another thing to do that week. You're like, great, here's one more thing I need to do to sort of every week that I need to remember to do. The second part, which is really important, is that it's not super personal, right? So this guy who we have a good relationship with, we're now asking him a stock question every week. Hey, how are we doing? Scale of 1 to 10 or 1 to 9 or whatever it is. And ultimately, as a business, we're thinking, what are we going to do with that information? How does that make us better? What does that tell us? What can we do with it? And I think from this feedback, we're kind of making some adjustments, looking at it. But the question is, how can we get this data without being disruptive to our clients, users, customers? If you're in an app business, you want to be as least disruptive to the users as possible. So as I'm sort of researching around and talking about this and with everyone, I come across something that I think is really interesting. And it's a feedback loop. I think everybody's pretty familiar with that, right? Like it's this invisible circle that can sort of massively influence change, good or bad, right? It can be good changes or bad changes depending on what you're talking about. But as a tech company, we need to be, with all the ideas, we need to be doing things a little bit differently. We need to be more thoughtful than Amazon and Walmart. Sure, they're on the cutting edge, but they still ask for surveys. They still ask how your customer experience was. They still want to know these things. So how, as a business, can we do something differently besides waiting on survey responses, which I'm sure you're just ready to get those responses back when you send it out. You want people to give you the information. So a really great example that I came across was this speed check by radar example from a Wired magazine article. I think it was 2003. So in Garden Grove, California, they had a bunch of school zones where they were trying to solve this problem of people speeding through the school zones. So what do you think the first idea is that they would go with? Write more tickets, right? We're going to write more speeding tickets. They even went as far as to write speeding tickets to parents during peak drop-off and pickup hours at school. If parents were speeding, they got a ticket with the kid in the car. They tried to make the speed limit signs brighter. They tried, a lot of different things, and none of it really made any significant impact on what they were trying to do. So does anybody know what the solution ended up being? Has anybody read this article before? Yeah?
Wasn't it the posted what your speed is?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So at the time, they called them dynamic feedback displays, or we know them as your speed signs, right? So basically, the implementation of this is seen here, And what ended up happening is they put this sign that gives you a digital display of your speed underneath it. In some areas that they put these, people's average speed was lower than the actual posted speed limit. That's how significant it was an impact on what they were trying to do. And the reason that this is really important is because it follows these sort of 4 key steps of how this feedback loop works. The first part is the evidence, gathering the data that you need, showing it back to the user as a way to say, hey, this is digestible to you, it's impactful to you. And then making it relevant, right? So if it's displayed like this, where you can see the number right above it, and you're in a school zone, you don't want to be the parent that's speeding through a school zone, right? So everybody can see it. It's kind of like this, group mentality. So the third thing is then the consequences of it. You start to think, all right, if I'm speeding through the school zone, what are the 3 things that can happen? I can hit a kid, definitely don't want that. I could have an accident with another car, or I could get a traffic ticket, right? So you get all this happening, and then the fourth thing is this action, which is people slow down. And it all happens non-intrusively, right? The user is not getting written a ticket and then paying it 2 months later. This is all very immediate. It's all happening in a very quick way, and it's non-intrusive. So if we take this and we apply it to sort of a digital industry, which is what I assume that most of us are in, or some kind of internet business, basically, you come across this model from Netflix where people are saying one thing, but they're doing another based on the data that they've been able to gather, right? So people are saying, I watch foreign movies and I watch documentaries, right? Like, oh, I can't wait to watch this new documentary this weekend. But like in truth, you're probably just going to watch Daredevil like from start to finish, right? So the point is that they're able to use this data that they gather to make decisions as a business, right? So the example, does anybody know the example of how House of Cards got made? No?
It was an English version.
Yeah, there was an English version. That's good. Yeah. So basically, Netflix. I'm sure you're all aware. They track your searches. They track your watches. They track how much you rewind, how much you pause. Do you watch things completely through? They track what time of day you're searching. They track your user reviews. So they get all this data. They get all this information without you having to do anything. Without you having to do anything out of the ordinary. In other words. And what they did was they took David Fincher, who is a director that people watch The Social Network from start to finish hundreds of times. They found that people love Kevin Spacey movies and things with Kevin Spacey in them, and then people watch the British version of House of Cards excessively, apparently. So what they did was they put all that stuff together and they created the English version of House of Cards. So does that mean it's going to be successful? Not necessarily. But they got the information they needed to make a more informed decision about how they can provide better content for their platform for you guys to watch, right? Me included. I'm not exclusive to that. So really the important part is, again, they used behavior to make a decision and didn't actively sort of like engage people to get that information, right? Which is the point of this, right? They didn't have to badger users. They didn't have to get in the way. So I think, as evidence of sort of these things, I would like to ask all of you, if you're in a position and people are asking you about surveys or what questions we should ask, stop and think, do we need to do this? My opinion is that we should stop completely. You don't need to solicit your customers to get the feedback that you're looking for. And this is why I think that. Because I sort of articulated these as listeners. These are some ways that I think that we can go about this a little bit better without having to be intrusive, without having to be disruptive, but sort of be disruptive in a good way. So these are by no means what you should absolutely do. They're just some ideas that I have that I came up with that I think that you guys could use as a starting point. So this really great example that I came across from Starbucks. Everybody loves Starbucks. So they created this website called My Starbucks Idea. And it was just a passive way for them to get information from customers without having to ask, how is this transaction? How is this phone call? How is your coffee? They let people come to them and give them the information that they needed to make informed decisions about their business. So, the refillable cold cups, the splash stick, I'm sure the pumpkin spice latte was an idea from somebody who submitted it, right? They get 80,000 ideas, but they're able to use 100 of them. So as a business, think about how that impacts what you're doing. If you have people giving you ideas that are unsolicited, and then you're this big juggernaut and you're able to implement them, think about how that comes across to customers. How do they talk about your business to other people, right? You didn't have to get in their way to get this information. They came to you with it, right? So one way that you can do this, I think that we can all do this, is there's this big sort of industry that's kind of in the underbelly right now, but I suspect that it's going to become more well-known, which is that there's sort of this social monitoring and these CRM platforms. I think Salesforce has the biggest one right now. It's called like Radian6, I believe. They claim to measure like 100 million social interactions per day, that kind of thing. Like they are monitoring, they have their finger on the pulse of what's going on these like social platforms, Twitter, Facebook, all the places where people might complain about your business, say something bad about it, or make a suggestion for a positive idea. Hey, I think you guys could do this differently. I'm sure that at some point you've all been like frustrated in some way and you've like tweeted about it, right? So this is a way to like passively collect that information. And if you're sort of a smaller company and you don't have a way to do that, these platforms are very searchable, right? So you can go to Twitter and just search your company name and kind of dig in a little bit and get more information. But the important part about this is that it's customer driven. They're starting the conversation. You're taking the information from them and sort of continuing it, either choosing to do something with it, categorize the request, or do something with that information. But they're starting it, and then you're meeting them where they are, which is a really important point to making changes in your business. And it's basically it's easy and huge wins when you get these kinds of interactions, right, and this information. Another great way, which I call passive freeform collection because I could not think of a better name, is Kissmetrics. Is a company that I like the story of. I think they do a really great job of going about analytics, and they really are thoughtful and intentional about what they do. So how many of you have ever been to a website where you've had like a pop-up or you visited for like a minute and it's like, hey, tell us about this. All right, okay, a couple people. So it's super interrupted to the flow. If you have a live chat, you have to have someone there to live chat with you. If there's real problems, maybe that's something that you can look in. But if you strategically think about what you're trying to collect, you want information and you want people to give it to you on their own accord. You don't want to have to actively solicit it from them. So this guy, Jason Evanish, I would recommend looking up. The blog post is called "The Secret to Great Feedback." He kind of goes more in depth about this, but you get basically the information when it comes through this way. It's more work for him because he's got to quantify this information. You got to put labels on it. Okay, I got this kind of request. But what you get is you start to get these buckets of like ways to improve, right? You get like a certain type of request, and you can kind of roll it all together. The beautiful part about this is when someone submits an idea, and you're already working on it because it's a high priority based on the need, you can let them know, hey, we're already working on that, or that's something that's coming down the pipeline. So it gives them a little bit better sort of relationship with their customers. This one, this is a way that I have used personally. So trolling your own reviews. If you have an app, if you have some kind of software, you have a local business that's reviewable, this is something that I've done personally in that what I did was I was thinking about creating a product. So before I got to this point, though, I was thinking about creating a product. So what's the first thing I did? Does anybody know? Take a guess. Should I? See if it exists already. Chad? Chuck, what did you say? Create a survey. I created a survey. Yes! So I created a survey that was like, would you buy this? Would you pay this much for it? How would you use it? These kinds of questions. I sent it out to my family, my friends. I was in like a couple of groups. I maybe sent it out to 30 or 40 people. I got 4 responses. And one of them was from Liza, so, like that doesn't really count. So what I ended up doing is kind of like, all right, this didn't work. What's the next step? So what I ended up doing was basically sorting reviews by like most critical, 1 star. I basically went on Amazon. I looked at similar products that I was thinking about creating. I sorted the reviews negative by the most negative first and looked for what the problems were that these people were talking about. Like in this case, the zipper was garbage. And on that particular product, I saw like 10 different reviews that said the exact same thing. The zipper's garbage. So people want a good zipper. So as a person who's thinking about a product, I know that a zipper is important to me because I can automatically, fix this problem, right? So if you have a business and you have it online anywhere and it's reviewable, definitely worth taking a look at. And then the sort of last way that I think is probably most familiar to a lot of us is people call it A/B testing, usability tests, things like that. The reason that I didn't call it A/B testing is because I don't really like that. I prefer to call it planned creeping, right? Because what you're doing is you're letting them, the user or the client, make the decision for you. So in this case, they're testing basically whether or not this full page works or this shorter like process is a better conversion. In that specific example, that one was 5% more return. The important thing here, though, is that you can also use this offline. You can still track. You could like pencil something. Like if you're even just trying to change around your office, if you move the trash can to another spot, like just make a note every time someone goes to the wrong place, right? Okay, that worked or it didn't work. Maybe people learn the new habit faster, maybe they don't. So a really quick example of the way that I think is a good way to go about this is to not test big changes, right? When you're A/B testing something or you're usability testing something, make the change very small. So like in this case, this is the only thing that's different between the two. And the reason that's important is because I think it's twofold important. One, because you already have really talented designers, developers, product strategists that work on these things. They're in on the industry. They know what's going on. So they're going to get what you're trying to do 90 to 95% there. So you're trying to test some small thing at the end to improve what you're trying to do. And the way you're going about it here is, again, you're using behavior and action and not actively soliciting anybody. So if they're clicking on one over the other one, then you know that this one's going to be better than that one. And then you can sort of create more tests off that if you need to. So these are the four things that I think that you could think about to kind of get started. And sometimes, if you have a situation where maybe these don't directly apply to you, maybe you have a little bit smaller business, maybe you have, you're looking for different ways to change or get feedback that you need. So I do have a few suggestions about that, which is, what's the last angry phone call you got from a customer? What did they tell you? Have you had that phone call before? Has anyone mentioned that to you before? Is your business growing, right? Like if you're trying to measure whether or not your business is doing better or you're making good decisions, are there ways that you can measure, your business growing? Is there a bottom line that you can look at? As project managers, developers, product strategists at Skookum, we spend a lot of time talking to clients about their experience, but in particular, we're talking about project-related things, and we just infer a lot of how they feel, or we look at their face, or we use those things to measure, because we're not actively reviewed anywhere in particular. We don't have like a review website. We don't have any way to be directly reviewed to get that feedback. And even for that matter, social media is not really an option for us either. So one of the things that we rely on is a internal meeting that we call Celebrate Failures. And the way this works is, as a person who's on a project, something went wrong, and so you knew it was a negative experience. And we take that and we sort of create like a couple of guidelines about how to present it. And then we have a town hall meeting about it for the whole company. And you talk about how you failed and why you failed and what you're doing to change it and make it better. So when that information is spread across, the organization, everybody has the awareness of to do that or not to do that. So this is another like non-intrusive way to sort of go about doing things without, badgering people. This brings up the second to last point that I want to make, which is you're probably doing it really well already, right? Go about your business as if you're doing it well because you probably are, right? Like you're great, and so are your customers, right? So is the experience. And if you're not, like you're going to know about it right away. Someone's going to tell you there's going to be a negative experience, something's going to happen. And then the last thing is that I would just like for everyone to think more thoughtfully, yeah, that works, about what you're after, right? What is it that you want to know? Be conscious about what you're asking for. Why do you want this feedback in particular? And I think, one of the things you'll realize when you start to ask these questions is, do I already have the information that I need to make a decision, right? Like I'm asking about, if I'm consciously thinking about what I'm going to ask the client in a survey, do I have that information available to me already in some way, right? And if you think about that, then you can kind of, look in places and try to make decisions or implement things that you can measure and make changes. So that's pretty much it for me. Thank you guys for coming. I hope this is proof. Thank you. I hope this is proof that you don't need a survey to get what you want and that you can take something away from here. If not, there's a suggestion box. Just kidding. Does anybody have any questions about anything or want to know more about? I had a lot of other ideas that I kind of rolled in or got left out. But I think another, two other good examples I wanted to mention before we go is Amazon, the one-click to buy feature was completely thought of, conceptualized, and designed from analytics alone. So they knew that customers were abandoning shopping pages. They knew that customers were behaving in a certain way. So they tried to figure out the easiest way possible for you to buy something from them, one-click shopping. The second example is the flashlight on your iPhone, right? There was like 5,000 flashlight apps early on, and then eventually that became part of the OS, right? But they didn't need anyone to tell them that. There was 5,000 apps in the store because people wanted a flashlight. So they implemented that in their business. So think about that. If you guys have any questions or you want to ask later, or you, yes, Ashley.
Is there a statistic about a greater percentage of if they give positive feedback or negative feedback?
So, if you, I guess it depends on what you're looking for. So if your survey is asking how can you improve the experience, that could be positive or negative. I think that most of the time people try to keep it positive, I think, but that's what you get on like these social platforms, and people to go out of their way to like negatively mention you or review your product negatively. Like happy people go to Twitter, but I would say that negative people go to Twitter 5 times faster and more boisterous. So you can kind of gather more information that way. Yeah.
So which of these techniques does Skookum use for their clients?
So we've tried a couple of different things, which was the 1 week pulse survey, which is kind of, I mean, I'd already been thinking about a lot of these things, but that kind of like rolled into the idea of this is, do we need to be doing that? What can we collect? What kind of information? And I think one of the feedback that we got caused us to be like, well, what do we really want as a business? What do we really need to get better and grow? Because I mean, we opened this office, so as a business, we're either growing or we're spending money we don't have, right? And I don't think we're doing the second thing. So what do? We do the failures meeting. We learn a lot from just client interactions. We rely on that to spread information. We have a really transparent sort of leadership and structure, so that whenever something major happens, like a major learning point or something that we should or shouldn't do, gets spread up the ladder pretty quickly, and that gets disseminated amongst like a small group to make sure that it kind of makes its way around. We're good about talk. We're not a really big company yet. We're about 75 people right now, so we still have the ability to like share information quickly and learn from each other. But I'm hoping that maybe we'll kind of go about some of these other things and look into them and see what we can do as well. Like, what do we really want, and then how can we go about getting it? Yeah. Yes.
Do you have any feedback or on when, like for instance, if I hire a company to clean my home, and after they clean my home, I get an email in the mail saying, share your experience of having us clean your house with your friends, then you get coupons for my next cleaning service.
All right.
Is that it's not quite feedback, but that's like asking me to share
Right.
an experience.
Yeah. So that brings up a really interesting point. One of the things that I did have on the recommendation list that I took off was incentivized surveys, and that's pretty problematic because if what they're looking for as a business, like the cleaning company, if they're looking for honest feedback about how to get better, then that's not the way to go about it, because they're going to get a lot of false answers. You're going to get a coupon for business. The thing that I would say to them is, if they're doing a good job and cleaning your house and they're coming back every week or every 2 weeks, then that's indicative as a business that you're doing a good job. If at any point they start losing repeat customers, then they start to look into why is that? And then you can go and find that person, or that maybe there's like maybe there's a particular crew of people that aren't doing a good job or being sloppy about it, and they can look into it that way. I think a lot of it, when it comes to surveys like that, is marketing based. They want like testimonials. They want like people make decisions based on reviews, so they need to get it somehow. And my suggestion is to let people come to your business and review it on Google or wherever else without having to solicit it, because they will naturally. If you're doing a great job and the customer service is above and beyond, it's just going to happen naturally. Yeah. Another thing I thought about as Skookum as a company is we tend to do a lot of phases with a lot of our customers, so that lets us know that we're I think it lets us know that we're doing a good job, right? Like they want to do phase 2 and phase 3 and phase 4. Like I think that's pretty indicative of us like sort of taking control of that situation. Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah.
Just a comment I was going to add time again. This is funny. This past week I was playing with taking our app reviews from the App Store.
Right.
Taking the word content of the review and setting it to alchemy. They have
Oh yeah.
analysis, so it takes like keywords out of the review and tells you whether they're positive or negative.
So based on the sentiment of like what's written in there.
The context of the word was used.
Yeah.
In the paragraph.
Yeah.
So it tells you whether it's positive or negative. You can check that against their star rating to make sure that you got it right. Like it doesn't have a sarcasm here. Like someone was like, there aren't enough stars to read this app, and it gave it a negative review because there's not enough stars.
Right.
The most part it gets it right, and what's neat is like we were pumping it into Elasticsearch and then using Kibana to kind of graph the flow of reviews and what sort of like you can change the timeline and look at what keywords were popping up, and it was pretty interesting because we had a release and there was a bug for like sign in, and then so all of a sudden these keywords started popping up in a negative sense that were saying can't log in or my account, or like if we had been paying attention to that real time to the reviews,
Yeah.
we would have caught it right away, and I don't think anyone in marketing looks at that often.
Yeah. That's a great point.
I'm sure you could do similar things with Twitter or with any of the social feeds where you're looking for your company name, doing sentiment analysis, tracking that over time.
Definitely. Absolutely. I mean, it's a very doable thing. It does take work. I mean, you have to like, do more than just create a survey and automate it out. But yeah, I think that is one of the best ways that you can keep track of, information, because people, if they're having a negative experience like sign in, they're going to come and let you know about it right away. And if you can, the cool thing is if you're graphing it like that, you can go back and look if there's a dip, like what do we do? Was there an update? What happened at that point? And you can kind of like dig into the data at that point and see what's going on.
It took us a little while to catch it. And I was thinking if we had that up and running previously when that went out, we might have caught it faster.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, when you see like a trend and your ratings start to go down, like you should alert somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have a process in place for that now?
No, it was for me, it was just like a research spike. So I just got it working and it looks pretty interesting. So we're gonna create it as a feature and add that into the work. Because for me, it was like I ran everything manually.
Right.
This should be pretty easy to automate.
Yeah.
So,
That's awesome. That's an excellent point. Thank you. Anybody else? Oh, yeah.
Well, we actually have, Leah and myself, we have a digital marketing company. We have a product that we've been building that we do sentiment analysis for reviews. So for like
Semantic analysis.
semantic
Word
analysis.
clouds, analytics.
So you can tell if Tony Roma's, for instance, is a company that is an example company. If the bread's always cold at this location in SoCal, right?
Yep.
They don't have a problem there. Or a server is being mentioned over and over in a negative way.
Right.
They know they have a personal problem.
Absolutely.
And you can search by specific people, like, I don't like this guy, I'm pretty sure my customers don't either. Put in his name and, oh, look, Rob comes up and nobody likes him. So, that guy's, I'm just kidding. But it's like that the word association comes up with like people or food or specific stores, or you can filter it to all different things.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's again like a way to search for it and be like cognizant and thoughtful about what you're trying to do. Like if you have a suspicion about something, you can go and find out information about it without having to get a survey out there that no one's going to fill out. And it's you're going to lead them to give you answers that may or may not help you, right? Like the Netflix example where people are saying one thing in practice, but they're doing another thing when it actually comes down to it, right?
Yeah.
So, absolutely. Anybody else? Yeah.
So with regard to like live chat being an anti-feature, I guess, do you think there's something to be said for like making customer support seamless in that way? Because doing it like this, you might miss. It's kind of like reading reviews is very after the fact.
Definitely.
And a real-time chat might be a way to like become instantly aware if it's less attrition and they do it right away.
Absolutely, and I think that there are definitely non-intrusive ways to go about that. I think if you are going to have a live chat as a feature, it should be something that is sort of available, but like in a sort of less significant way than popping over the screen. Because there's a lot of sites that I visited recently where it's like can I help you with anything? And it like pops up on the page. That's pretty intrusive. Like wait till there's again, waiting for the user to come and say, hey, I need help. And then you're going to the live chat, and then it's happening it that way, as opposed to, unsolicited website. You're just on their website. You're trying to get some information or buy something.
So like the little intercom, question mark in the bottom right of the screen, you don't think that's
No, I really don't, because again, that kind of follows the same like passive comment box, right? Like it's passive. You can go and search it as a user. You can find that spot on the page and go and get the help that you need. A lot of times, I think that a way, a lot of sites capitalize on that is the contact page, or you have like, if you know that you have a lot of trouble issues, or you're trying to work some things out, you actually have a help link at the top. Maybe that takes you to a page. So you're letting the user find that and then, participate in whatever way they need to, instead of asking them, how's their day?
As a user, I'll say that I would actually prefer to have a live, like real-time chat, because in one software that I use, every time I have an issue, I have to waste time writing up this whole long issue, trying to explain it, and then they don't get back to me sometimes in 72 hours, and that's very frustrating. So I actually wish the software would have a little button where I could click and say, hey, I do have an issue, let's chat and figure this out right away.
Absolutely. You should let them know.
They know.
Oh, okay, that's fair. Have you asked if anybody else is? I mean, push them. Has anybody else asked for this? Am I the only one? Like.
So the software I'm talking about is Pardot. It's a marketing automation software.
Okay.
And they have a place where you can go and submit ideas, kind of like the Starbucks.
Mm.
So I know people have posted that idea, and just like Starbucks, they have tons of suggestions, and they can only pick a few.
Yeah.
So I've suggested it. Mine hasn't been selected yet. We'll see.
That's fair.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, that's that's another example of the same kind of thing though, where they let it come through, and maybe it's coming. I don't,
Yeah.
Ask how long. What's the timeline on this? Come on.
Yeah. Yep.
That's a good point. Thank you. Anybody else? Yeah, Mel.
Another example of the positioning that you're talking about. I hate to talk bad about InVision now because I love it so much, but they have this new thing where if they have like a new feature or something like that, they'll have a little pop-up that'll come out with a guy's face being like, "Hey Mel, we have this great new feature I want you to hear about." It always pops up right over like the main functionality that I'm like unconsciously going to, so I always click on it, and then his whole thing will like take over, and then I'll be like, so many clicks away now.
Yeah, or if I hit back to get back to the same spot, like what is that all about? Yeah, that is kind of, I've noticed that in a couple other apps, like even like iPhone apps, where they're like, hey, here's a new feature, let me tell you about it. And as much as people love to hate or hate to love Snapchat, I think they do a great job of not telling you much about it. They just let you figure it out. Like there's a bunch of secret features, you go and figure it out, right? Like that's cool. And I think there's something to be said for that when it comes to new features.
That's like the equity for that, is because people are like, oh, how did you do that?
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
want that. That's their equity, is like the peer-to-peer, like they can measure that.
Yeah, which is
See
awesome,
the
right?
growth, so it's like the proof in the pudding, but yeah.
Exactly.
Super effective.
Exactly. Do they know exactly what's driving the growth? Maybe not, but they know that what they're doing currently is working, and they're,
Right.
people are talking about it,
Yeah, exactly.
good or bad, right? Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Anybody else? Cool. Thank you. If you guys want to get more food, please feel free to do that. Appreciate it.